All right. So I know I quit smoking yesterday, and I went like 24 hours because today I smoked again and I bought another pack of cigarettes. I'm about to have another cigarette in a little while. Because I'm stressed out. Something happened last night. That I'll try to go over briefly because it gets easy to get carried away, with the details of it, and I want to just get the basic idea of it, because the details, while they're important, and that's some of the most important stuff, I think the general idea has to be clear and not muddled with other details that may make it seem less important. So what happened last night was I recently, just in March, started blogging again. I got back onto social media, and I said, I just want to be left alone. I just want to be free. I just want to be at peace. And last night I got a conversation with one of my friends, childhood friend, who you would think would be supportive of me and give me some sort of credit, But it turns out that this friendship is probably more of a rivalry to him, some sort of adversarial relationship rather than a mutually cooperative friendship that, friendly rivalry. Doesn't seem all that friendly of a rivalry when he's telling me that I should, that first off, that I think I'm always right. I don't think there's anybody in the world, even the people that I respect, who are always right. I think it's pretty human, and we don't have enough wisdom or knowledge to always be right. And even if we did, the human brain is just, geez. So, he said that sarcastically, I think I'm always right. You know, Not like he didn't mean it, but he meant it, as he said it, you're never wrong, and you know, he was questioning my credibility. He was questioning, whether things actually happened in my life, and my memory is pretty good, and I rarely get my memories mixed up. Not saying it doesn't happen, but I think my memory is pretty good. And when I recall things that are like, me getting harassment online, or getting harassed by the police, he tells me, you go looking for trouble with the police, and oh well, you can't prove anything with what happened with online, referring to me getting anonymous messages, and a fake Twitter account in my name, more or less mocking me, taunting me before Occupy San Diego, before that arrest, and that itself was suspicious as fuck. Excuse my language, but if you're watching this, you probably have the discretion to use the word fuck, if not sparingly, only when it's fitting. So anyway, so it's related to that, and he was telling me that he doesn't think that I should think that Liz was responsible for any of it, and in fact he thinks that I should think Liz is completely innocent of it all, because there's not enough evidence to implicate her. And he says, she's just an ex who, fucked me over with this court case that came up, and, he says there's lots of exes like that, but the other stuff, it's just some asshole. It's just somebody you don't know. And statistically speaking, somebody you don't know is the least likely candidate for a person to be, antagonizing taunting, harassing you, just statistically speaking, most of the time, harassment, antagonism, even violence or other, antagonism is perpetrated by people within close social connections, your neighbor or your family member or your friend, something like that. And his attitude makes me suspicious of where he stands on all of this, because he is so ready to dismiss everything as like, well, you don't have enough evidence. Well, no. The only way that you would have evidence of some of this is if you were living in my flesh and blood body. And so you have to give me some sort of credit for giving you my account. People have credibility when an expert in a field of, say, science, medicine, some sort of pursuit says something. They don't always go into, well, this is the experiments that we conducted, these are the studies, this is this statistical result, these are the numbers and the figures and the results of everything. Especially not in public discourse, especially not with their, with publications like that aren't scientific journals, And so you kind of take their word for when these things come up. And I figured that it wasn't asking for much for him to take my word when some of these things were happening, because why would I have any reason to make up, somebody literally somehow intercepted the call that I was making to the police when Elizabeth and I were having an argument, and I was calling the police because I just couldn't deal with her. I couldn't, bring her down and, be reasonable with her, and I felt like the police were my best chance to de-escalate the situation. Plus, it was in public. I didn't want to make a scene, so I was like, it's going to be a scene one way or another, so I'm going to choose the way that somebody here who is, who has that position of authority will come in and calm her down, or, help her out with whatever issues she's having that are making her hysterical. And so I called the police, the non-emergency line for the sheriffs, and the call didn't go through, and some sort of computer operator thing answered or intercepted the call, and told me, I know where you live, I know who you are, or something along those lines. I think it said like we're watching you or something like that. And it didn't say anything like, threatening per se, but it was threatening in its nature. It was like intimidating. And I think it was trying to do that, intentionally. Somebody who was hiding their voice or, choosing not to use their voice at all. And who was doing so at a moment when I needed some sort of help, as if, saying, you don't deserve that help. So he was questioning that ever happened, and he was questioning that my interactions with the police were ever anything to do with the police's fault. He's a statist. He's a statist. So he respects the police. In fact, he wanted to be a police officer. He wanted to be a border patrol. Ooh, even more nationalistic. He said he could be good within the system. Yeah, I'm stressing out about this just talking about it. Anyway, he was gaslighting me. He was saying, these things never happened, and, the way that happened, it's your fault, and you're to blame. And another friend, one of my other close friends, these are both childhood friends who I have grown up with, and, we don't have the same opinions despite having grown up, together in the same general environment. We don't have the same views, and And so my other friend says, he understands why, our such opposing, the first friend and I's opposing worldviews could lead to us getting under each other's skin. But that he means well, and that, he just wants what's best for me. So, I told him, I wish I could believe that. I'm having trouble believing it the way that he's, talking to me. Like, I owe him something, for him giving me his friendship. Instead of it being mutual, it's like he's giving me some sort of charity by being my friend. And he says, well, it's hard to be friends with someone who has such little regard for their, their well-being, or something along those lines. Basically saying, I don't care about myself, so, it's hard for them to be good friends. I care for myself. I really do. And that's why I have such trouble with these systems and, the way that they ask me to live my life. But I could go into that at a later date. Right now, just going into what happened last night, he tried to talk to me about how my choices in life lately have been, they've been sign that I don't care for myself. Leaving the city and, doing this, he views as, setting myself back. And I told him, I can't morally justify exploiting most of the world just to attain my position of comfort in society. And I feel responsible for all of those people beneath me, and they are beneath me, and they are subservient in, many ways, and their suffering is what feeds into my status in society and my material wealth and even to some degree whatever health I have left, And I know I'm smoking indoors. Terrible, terrible. I'll air it out. It's the least of my concerns right now. So he says, most people would use their position, their privileged position to do charitable work or something. And he admitted he was a little too negative with that comment, but that hit me because I've contributed to charities. I've contributed to even police, charity when, I was younger and had just started working. Some of my first paychecks were contributed to police when I believed in the nobility of police before I saw the reality of things. And I've contributed to community organizing for, progressive ideals, and I've contributed to volunteer work for, underprivileged communities and, community education, and I was part of a group organizing a community garden. I worked as a volunteer at a community garden. 2 community gardens, but at the one that I'm talking about, I was actually, kind of the only person there. And so I didn't see a lot of contribution from the community. And what I told him was, that concept of use your position to do good in the world, for the underprivileged, is like saying you can be a righteous slave owner. Nowadays, it's easy for people to understand that that's a contradiction, that that's an oxymoron. There is no righteousness in slaveholding. And so you can be a slaveholder, for example, and educate your slaves and teach them how to read and write. You know, allow them their own quarters. Give them days off, that sort of thing. But it still makes you a slaveholder. You still have power over them, and you're still benefiting from their toil and their suffering. Even if you try to reduce that suffering, you're still benefiting from their state of have not. And meanwhile, you do have. And that advantage, that power that you have, is self-serving, and it doesn't come back around to them. They're not grateful that they are subservient to someone. They'll be grateful that you're less imposing than other slaveholders. They won't be grateful that they're slaves in the first place. So I told him that, and I told him, I think that living in American society, there's a lot of people who go off grid and they become self-sufficient and independent. I'm not including those people because they see that detaching themselves from the establishment is actually beneficial for them. And in effect, even if they're not doing it for those reasons, they are also, not directly or not as much benefiting from the suffering of other peoples. And so I don't include those people, but I think most of mainstream society benefits from the suffering of the rest of the world. And, suffering is probably a strong term for most, for most people. But call it what you will, subservience, poverty, or state of being less fortunate. I don't want to be a slaveholder. I don't believe in the establishment of slaveholding. And so the modern day parallel is you don't get to see the slaves, you don't ever have to whip them, you don't have to tell them what to do. Your country will, make sure of that. So long as you obey your country, you will enjoy the benefits. And I don't want to enjoy the benefits of having other people, other governments that are subservient to this government or compliant with this government oppress their people, or the indigenous populations, or other countries or ethnic groups for the benefit of that government, and in turn benefit for this government. So I don't want to participate in that, and I don't think it's crazy. And I don't think I am, lacking in my faculties in thinking about this in a way that I reason in a way that leads me to the conclusion that I can't participate in that corrupt system anymore. So I'm detaching myself. And that second friend also said, well, now you're going to be exploiting the world, firsthand instead of indirectly. And, I don't see, where that came from. It seemed like kind of an attack. I don't plan on, exploiting people. I feel like I'm trying to get down to the bottom of the pyramid, or bottom of one of the pyramids in society, globalized society, and trying to participate as little as possible in the establishment and benefit from what I know. I have a certificate in permaculture, so maybe I can use that as a tool. I know in the last video I said I'm not prepared, but I have some preparation. I have some mental tools, some cognitive tools in my toolkit that I think I can use, I can apply to the real world. This form of regenerative agriculture that integrates multiple systems to, cause the, surplus to be beneficial to humans. And so, I'm not up shit creek without a paddle. I have some rudimentary paddle, and I think in the time being, while I find or somehow craft a new paddle, this will do for now. I think, given the circumstances of where I was practicing permaculture in an urban setting or a suburban setting, it has its benefits, for society, and it's ethically justifiable, and it's good and everything. It does its effect. But again, that benevolent slaveholder analogy, I don't want to, because you need to feed yourself, so you need a way to make money. The way you make money, I'm not so business savvy as some other permaculturists, and so I don't have my own personal business. And what Elizabeth did to me effectively knocked me out of the competition. I am at a much more disadvantaged position in society, socially, economically, and tied to socially, culturally. I'm like a second-rate citizen in the U.S., and I don't want to live life as a second-rate citizen, even if it gives me some sort of benefit over the rest of the world. I'd rather be free to, earn the food off of the sweat of my brow and that sort of thing. And I know in the first video that I posted on my channel, I showed you I'm not in great shape. I'm in the worst shape I've been. I used to be in better shape, though, so I know it's possible. If I were to quit smoking and if I were to be more active, probably working for my food would help that. Anyway, I don't think this will take too long to upload. I think I've got a total of 30 minutes, so I'll try to span the 30 minutes with productive thoughts. Like I said before, when I'm older and look back on this, I'll be able to reminisce. So it's good to go over what I am going through right now, to better understand myself, my state of mind, my decisions at this point, and how they will affect the future outcome. Like I said, I recently started going back on social media. I'm not a very social person, and so social media is I don't have very much in the way of social inclination or social skills. The friendship that I do have, I'm able to maintain, whatever they have been worth. They're showing that that perhaps they're not everything I thought they were cracked up to be. But I have respect and integrity, and I try to be honorable, and I feel like when you are these things, they feed back to you in a social system. It's a give and take. The better qualities that you enable in yourself, that you reinforce in yourself, the better your relationships are. But what I'm being shown is that, even Donald Trump, even Hitler, if you want to go that far, had significant others. They had loving, relatives and friends, and, a wide-ranging circle of influence and friends. So, they had a lot of support. So it seems a little depressing to think about how I'm lacking in a lot of those things, and I'm not nearly as bad as some of those people. But, Elizabeth would like to paint me in that picture as a horrible person who deserves to be punished and doesn't deserve their freedom. She said that in her blog recently. Like I said, she started posting suspiciously. I won't say, because of, correlation does not mean causation, but suspiciously right after I come back onto social media, she starts posting, and big surprise, she posts about me. She doesn't mention me by name, but she calls me, I think like a former lover or something like that. So it sounds like she softened her her, arrogance, and I hope she doesn't take that as offense, saying that she's been arrogant. It's just an observation. And her hate, her blatant hate, what's been driving her. And she says that I'm crazy. She says the doctors have said I'm crazy. She says I don't deserve to be free because I'm guilty, and I wish I could discuss this with somebody who was open-minded and, open to facts, and, try to make their views more objective, or as objective as possible. But I disagree with her, and I think the doctors disagree with her too. I have not been diagnosed as quote-unquote crazy. First off, I don't think that's a professional diagnosis. And I think what she's trying to allude to is that I am schizophrenic, which is actually not the diagnosis that I got from the only doctor who evaluated me after about 10 days of, a hospital stay and an interview, or a couple interviews, So I feel like, the doctor who gave me a diagnosis of severe depression, which resulted, because of that severe depression, into, psychotic breaks or episodes, which seemed like psychosis, but were in fact stress-induced. And, I had to cite with the first friend several, medical articles about how psychiatry is overly eager to prescribe medication and to diagnose with these diagnoses that serve no helpful function in general psychology. And so, one of the articles talked about how psychologists were trying to state the case that psychiatry is, actually harming patients, and more good could be done by taking people off these medications and reevaluating the diagnoses based off of, a complex array of social, emotional, and otherwise environmental, stimuli or conditions. The brain behaves in a lot of ways that may be easy to just dismiss as wrong or neurodivergent. And I think under the stress that I was, put, many of my friends, if not all of them, would have reacted much worse. And, me suffering, mental breakdown, anxiety, panic attack, situation, or, being suspicious, they were triggered, or they were brought on by these stresses and these circumstances, which are, verifiable. I can't wait for technology to be able to, read your brain and, pick out memories, because I will preserve these memories of, people harassing me and antagonizing me and, taunting me in other ways that, kept me, or kept themselves at arm's length, and so they protected themselves with that, shield of, I can't do anything about it, and they're somehow, anonymous or protected. And, to wrap this up, the gist of it is, my friend thinks that I should not blame Liz, and that there's some sort of mysterious stranger who wants to ruin my life. I think that's more far-fetched and a little paranoid. Why would some stranger have any interest in ruining my life, So yeah. And I think that'll do it for now, before we hit 30 minutes.